So what if we just consciously this week started asking ourselves periodically throughout the day, what are we focused on? And are we focused on where we want to go or on where we don't want to go? Because I'll tell you right now, if you focus on what you don't want, that you're not a world-class CISO and no one will hire you, that's exactly what you'll get. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome, welcome, welcome to this week's edition of Life of a CISO with yours truly, Dr. Eric Cole. It's always a pleasure to spend some time with you and to talk about my favorite topic, which, as you all know, is not really life of a CISO. It's really being a world-class CISO. I don't want you to be good. I don't want you to be average. I want you to be world-class. See, let me put it differently. You are world-class. Right? I'm not going to make you anything. Right? Every one of you listening to this is world-class. All I want to do, and my goal, is to help you focus in and remember who you are. I often, when I do with coaching or things like that, they're like, Eric, can you teach me how to be world-class, or can you teach me this or that? And I'm like, no, because it's not a teachable skill, right? It's something you're born with, right? Everyone's born with unique talents that make them world-class. I don't believe there is anybody on this planet that doesn't have the potential to be world-class. The question is, are they going to remember who they are? And are they going to remember that they're world-class? Or are they going to focus on not being world-class and being average? So I'm going to kick off today's episode with a simple question. What are you focused on? What do you focus your time and energy on? Do you focus it on being world-class, or do you focus it on being average? Do you focus it on all the amazing, great things that are happening all around you, or are you focusing in on the bad, the negative, and the things that tend to go wrong? Because remember, in any given moment, in any given day, there is good or bad. There is positive or negative, right? There is average and world-class. But you get to control how you interpret it. You get to control what you focus on. Now, here's the coolest part about that question. It is simple to answer. If you want to know the answer to what do you focus on, look at your current life. Look at where you're currently at and look at what you're currently doing, and that will tell you exactly what you're focused on, because your mind is a goal-achieving machine. So whatever you focus on, you're going to achieve. So if you currently are not a CISO, you're not a world-class CISO, you've been trying to become a world-class CISO for a year and it hasn't happened. And by the way, that's my ideal client. I love those folks, right? Because I can help you really quickly because it's easy. I just change your focus. So if you've been trying to get a job as a CISO for 6 months, 9 months, or 12 months, and you haven't, it's very, very simple. It's because you're focused on you not being qualified. You not being a CISO, nobody would hire you. I can almost guarantee, it's to the point now where I could predict the conversation. When I get a new client and they do the intake form and they essentially say that they've been trying to become a CISO for X months, usually 6 or greater, usually it's 9, 12, sometimes it's 18 or 24, and I've not been able to get a CISO job, I just smile. Because here's how the conversation's going to go. I'm going to start off and say, tell me a little bit about yourself and what you want to do. And it'll almost always go something along these lines. Eric, I really, really want to be a CISO, but I just don't have the experience. I just don't have the background. And just to be completely honest with you, Eric, nobody is going to hire me as a CISO. No one is going to hire me. I just don't have the credentials that are needed. And it's almost a guarantee because it's simple. If you got on the call and you said, Eric, I'm a world-class CISO, companies would compete to get me. When I apply for jobs, I get calls back immediately and almost always get an offer, and I get to decide and choose because I'm that well focused and that well qualified. If that is really what you were focused on and you're not just lying, you actually believe that and that's what you're focused on, guess what? You wouldn't be on the phone with me. Now, you might use me for different things, right, to get to that next level, but the point is you wouldn't be on a call with me saying you can't get a CISO job, because if that's really what you were focused on, you would have a CISO job already. You would be a CISO. You would be a world-class CISO. So it's very, very interesting that the thing that always holds us back is never what you think. It's never your experience. It's never that the company doesn't want to hire you. It's never this or that. It's always what you focus on. If you are focused on not being a world-class CISO and not having the skill set and not being hired, that's what you're going to get. And like I said, I love those clients because depending on how long and how entrenched those limiting beliefs are, it will take me anywhere from 30 minutes to 30 days. Sometimes 45 if you're a little stubborn, right? No, but it'll take a pretty quick period of time for me just to convince you otherwise and change your thinking. And then once you're convinced that you're CISO material and that companies would be amazed and blessed to have you as their CISO, everything changes. I know some of you that might be listening to this are saying, Eric, you're getting to crazy world, right? You're just getting into weird stuff, right? Sorry, I get excited and sometimes cough a little bit, get emotional, right? I promise no, I shouldn't say I promise. I don't think I'm going to start crying, but you never know, right? It's all the emotions coming out here, so it's awesome stuff. But the point is, it's true. You can think it's weird, it's voodoo. You can be like Eric's getting into straight motivational stuff. The point is, data doesn't lie. I have the data to back this up. I think I'm up to, I lost track at 20, but I think it's probably close to 30 now. But I have 20 actual cases over the last year. I've been doing it a lot longer, but just in the last 12 months, where all 20 of them plus came to me, exactly what I said. We changed their thinking, and within a month or two, they were world-class CISO, or they got the CISO job that they wanted, and they're on their way to being world-class. And it's simple. I'll do the exercise with you. If you come to me and go, Eric, I'm not CISO material. No one would hire me as a CISO. Here's the exercise. What are the skill sets that make someone CISO material? You're telling me you are not CISO material. So clearly, you must know what CISO material is for you to make that claim. So what is CISO material? And they'll usually push back a little bit. I'm like, no, just whatever comes to mind. Like, well, somebody who can go in and translate, somebody who's a really good communicator, somebody who can brief the executive, somebody who understands business. I say, okay, let's look at your resume. Have you ever gone in and had to translate between technical and business? Has that ever been something you had to do in your job? Yes, here. Okay, we got first one. Second, have you had to have a brief vice presidents or managers or directors or executives? It doesn't matter the level. And they're like, yeah, I do that all the time. Great, check. Do you communicate well? Or are you able to send emails, communicate, give presentations? Yes. So you just told me what CISO material is, and you met the criteria. So I don't understand where you said you're not CISO material, because it sure sounds like you are. And then they'll go in and start going, but I've never briefed a chairman of a board. Okay, who cares? But that wasn't on your list. You didn't tell me that was a characteristic. Who cares? Well, Eric, I've only gone in and worked with executives 4 times. Who cares? Well, you didn't tell me it had to be more than 5 when you went there. Stop creating artificial limitations that aren't needed to change and draw your focus away from who you really are. If you really get down to it, you are world class. You are CISO material. You just have to focus in on the positive and not the negative. There is no perfect resume. If I wanted to, I could take any resume for a CISO position and find fault with it. It's just like with any human. There's no perfect human. Oh, trust me. There are many people that have worked with me or know me that if you ask them for my faults, right, and you ask them for the things that I aren't good at and negative, I'm sure they would plentifully give you hours worth of information, right? I am definitely not perfect, but the point is, are you going to focus on what is missing, or are you going to focus on what is there? And I can guarantee the there is there. And what I mean by that is, if you're saying CISO material, I can guarantee there's CISO material there. I can guarantee it. It's just, what do you focus on? Because what you focus on is where you go. And a great example of that is, I don't know if we have anybody who does race car driving. I love sports cars. Right? I love driving fast. And there's this thing on a problem that I've had where I've had to give a lot of donations to the Virginia State Trooper Fund, which basically means I've got some speeding tickets, right, in the past, because I like to go fast. The problem is going fast on roads that have speed limits is problematic, right? So I tend to now go to the racetrack and go very fast there, because it's much more, you can go fast, right? There's no speed limits, and that's what it's meant for. And I've even taken some driving lessons. And it's interesting. If you've ever taken race car lessons, it's a 2-seated car, and you're driving, and the instructor is next to you. And they have this little box. And this box has 4 little buttons on it. And when they press one of the buttons, it basically corresponds to one of the tires in the car, right? The front left, front right, back left, back right. And when they do that, it's a special car, and that portion drops. That portion of the car drops, which causes you to spin out in that direction. And the idea is, if you're going to learn how to race cars, the number one skill you need to have in order to stay alive is you need to be able to come out of a spin. Because when you're going that fast on that type of track, in that type of car, there are so many variables that can and will go wrong that it's inevitable that you will start spinning, that you will lose control of the car and get into a spin. And then the question is, can you get out of the spin? Because if you get out of the spin, you survive, and if you don't, you go into the wall and bad things happen. So that's sort of the number one skill. And the trick is, when you get into a spin, you roll in the direction, but you put your eyes where you want to go. So as you're spinning, you're looking down the track where you want the car to be. And you're focused on that as you're coming out of spin. There's a lot more complexity. So I know some of you that are doing race car driving, you're like, Eric, you're leaving out a lot of details. Absolutely. Right? I'm just giving the high levels here. But the point is, it's proven that where you focus tends to be where the car goes. Now, most people, including me, the first couple of times you're in the car, and it starts spinning, where do you think you focus? The wall, right? You're focused on where you don't want to go. And if you're focused on where you don't want to go, what happens? That's where you go, right? So the big part of the training is as we get into a spin and I'm looking at the wall, the instructor literally tricks my food, right? And turns it to look back at where I want to go. And what I love about that analogy is that's life. When we start spinning out of control in life, when we start getting into some unpredicted situation, which will happen, same thing, just like with the race car. If you look at life, the racetrack of life, and you look at yourself as the car, there are so many variables here. Things will inevitably go wrong. Things will inevitably go wrong without you realizing it, without prediction. And the irony of it is, if you focus on the wall, if you focus on where you don't want to go, you focus on the problems and the issues, that's where you end up going. But if you focus on what you want and where you want to go, that will also happen. Now, once again, not a guarantee, right? But it's a much higher probability of success. So the question is, back to where I started, what are you focused on? Are you focused on what you don't want, which is natural? That's what most people do. They focus on the wall and they go into the wall. So most people aren't as successful as they want, and they're not world-class because they're focused on what they don't want. And if you're focused on what you don't want, that's exactly what you get. You get what you don't want, which is the irony of ironies, right? It's the most bizarre thing. By focusing on where you don't want to go, you end up creating what you don't want. So what if we just consciously, this week, started asking ourselves periodically throughout the day, what are we focused on? And are we focused on where we want to go or on where we don't want to go? Because I'll tell you right now, if you focus on what you don't want, that you're not a world-class CISO and no one will hire you, that's exactly what you'll get. But if you focus on what you want, that you're a world-class CISO and people will hire you, that's exactly what you'll get. So on this theme of what are you focused on, let's transition into what should a CISO be focused on? As a Chief Information Security Officer for a company, what should you be focused on? What you should be focused on is the solution. You should be focused on making cybersecurity a business enabler. You should be focused on minimizing the risk and balancing functionality and security. You should be focused on increasing revenue and profitability within the organization. Those should be the things you focus on. However, what is it that most CISOs focus on? Most CISOs focus on the problem. They focus on the systems not being patched, or data not being encrypted, or vulnerabilities that are present in the environment. And just like our analogy, what you focus on is what you get. So if you focus on the problem, you get more of the problem. If you focus on the solution, you get more of the solution. Now, I'll be honest with you, I always plan my podcasts. Usually I spend 2 or 3 hours building, taking notes, putting everything together just for a 30-minute podcast. And hopefully you can feel that I have the quality in there. And I'll be honest with you, I was going back and forth whether I should go here in this episode because it's a little deep. Right? It's calling out some folks, right? A couple of you might get a little defensive here. Now remember, if somebody says something to you and you react, you get a reaction. You get emotional, you get angry, you want to punch them in the face. Hopefully you don't want to punch me in the face. You got such a pretty face. Why would you want to punch me, right? No, I'm joking. I'm sure some of you might have me up on dartboards, right? Or stuff like that. But the point is, and this is very important, when somebody says something that causes an emotional reaction, typically anger or frustration, it's because your body is trying to protect you, because it knows that what that person is saying is not what you're doing, and creates an emotional reaction to try to protect you from recognizing the reality or the flaw. To put it in plain English, when you get upset or angry when somebody says something, most of the time, it's because what they're saying is true, and you don't want to hear it. With love in my heart, right? We're going deep here. We're going deep in this episode. So the point is, if at your job you are firefighting almost all day long, and there's always problems and there's always issues, and you are the person that tells me, Eric, nobody in the organization listens to me, nobody takes my advice, everyone ignores me, it's because that's what you're focused on. The CISOs that come back and go, Eric, I'm always invited to the meetings, I'm always called on for advice, I brief at every board of directors meetings, and honestly, they just put me on the board to oversee and look at cybersecurity and technology. That's because you're focused on the solution. Now, I'm going to pull on this a little more. This is really the difference between a world-class security engineer and a world-class CISO. And I know I touched this on the last episode, but I felt like we didn't complete it because we ran out of time, so I want to sort of take. So if you're going, Eric, you briefly mentioned, I know that, I'm aware of it, I just want to go deeper on this because it's a very, very important topic. World-class security engineers, what makes them world-class is they can identify problems and vulnerabilities that others can't see. They can find problems before others can and fix them. So a great example of a world-class security engineer is you're launching a new system and it's in beta and it's going to launch in 4 months. And you want to make sure you've went through testing and quality assurance and it looks good, but you want to make sure there's no security vulnerabilities in it. You bring in a world-class security engineer and they will go in and find vulnerabilities. There's this weakness, there's that weakness, there's that weakness, there's that weakness. That's what makes them world-class, is they can find problems that others can't see. Now, here's the issue. World-class security engineers are paid to find problems. But those problems need to be fixed. They can't just be left there. And that's the problem with companies that don't have a CISO. You have these vice presidents or these product development teams or these other business units that get so frustrated with cybersecurity because there's only cybersecurity engineers, there's no CISO, and every time they bring in the security team, they identify a bunch of problems and basically say, boom, they're your problem, have a nice day. And now the business unit is stuck with all these problems that they don't know how to fix because they're not security experts. And that's why you have so much tension and frustration in the system, because you're missing a critical link. And the critical link is the CISO, the translator, or the one that creates the solution. World-class security engineers identify problems. World-class CISOs identify solutions. So now you put a chief information security officer in place, and they're taking what the security engineers identified, they translate it, and now they go back to the business unit. Instead of saying, here's all your problems, they now go back and say, here's your solution. They actually give them a solution to the problem. And this is one of the many reasons why the longer you're a security engineer, a world-class security engineer, it's not impossible, but the harder it is for for you to become a CISO. Because if you've been a world-class security engineer for 15 years, you are the best of the best of finding problems. You are the best of the best of finding vulnerabilities and exposure points within systems. You do it better than anybody else. And clearly, unless you're a little crazy, you must enjoy that. Because why else would you have done that for 15 years if you don't enjoy it? Right? If that's not what you love to do, then why would you have done that? So clearly you love it, you're good at it, and you enjoy it. So what happens when you become a CISO? As they say, old habits are hard to break. You're going to go back to what you know, what you love, and what you enjoy, which is finding problems. And that's why many new CISOs struggle and have difficulty. Because as I've said many, many times, I'm just giving you many different perspectives, but a world-class security engineer and a world-class CISO are two different career tracks. You can transition, but the longer you've done one, the harder it is to do the other because of the habits that have been built. So the other thing, if I'm taking a world-class security engineer, 8+ years experience, 8, 10, 12 years experience, I'm going to spend most of my time with them on switching them to focus on business and solutions. Because if I can get them to speak business, think cybersecurity as a business enabler, and I can get them to focus on solution-oriented mindset and not a problem identification mindset, they're going to be amazing. They're going to be world-class. Company's going to love them. Everyone's going to want them. And as I said, that's what makes you world-class. But if you can't make that transition, and there's a few folks that I coach for a couple of weeks, and I basically say, listen, we're going to do two things. One, I'm going to stop coaching you because I don't want to take your money if you're not going to listen to me. And if you're not going to listen to me, you're going to waste my time. I'm going to waste your time. And if you don't listen to me, our relationship is going to fracture and get worse and worse and worse because I'm going to get more aggressive. You've decided you're not going to listen to me, and you're going to get more stubborn. So if I just see somebody that just doesn't want to listen and learn, I'm going to say we should end the relationship. And then in this case, I'm going to say you should continue to be a world-class security engineer. That's what you love to do. And in this case, I was trying to coach them. You need to stop being so technical. You need to stop focusing on the problem. You need to think business and think solution. And they kept saying, Eric, with all due respect, I disagree with you. For me to be successful, I need to focus in on what I've always done. And I need to focus in on the technical, because that's what I'm really good at, and on the finding the problems. Those are my strengths. I'm going to focus in on my strengths, Eric. I'm not going to focus in on business and solution because those are my weaknesses. I said, awesome. Stay as a security engineer. But the logic of saying, I'm going to continue with my strengths, but I'm not going to change, but I'm going to significantly change career tracks is insane. Right? It's galactically stupid. Right? It doesn't make any logical sense. And like I've always said, you can make a lot of money as a world-class security engineer. And you can make a lot of money as a world-class CISO. And you can be happy in both of those positions. But if you keep the security engineer mindset and you pursue a CISO title, you won't be world-class, you won't be happy, and you'll be frustrated. So why are you forcing yourself to be somebody you're not? So this is always the initial discussion, and I'll have it with all of you. Do you really want to be a CISO? Do you really want to change who you are, what you've done, and where you're going? Because most of you that are listening to this are security engineers, world-class security engineers, are on your way to be a world-class security engineer. And you have to recognize that if you want to switch career tracks to being a CISO and a world-class CISO, it's a different focus. It's a different way of thinking. And you have to be willing to change how you think and what you focus on. And if you are willing to do that, you absolutely will be world-class. So I'm going to end the podcast with how I started. And I just want you to spend a lot of time this week focusing in on what are you focused on.